His Excellency Dr. Hamad Al-Sheikh Ahmad Al-Saivani, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to address you at this 18th Dubai International Humanitarian Aid and Development Conference. I have just come back from the Polish-Ukrainian border, actually following Commissioner Lenarchich, who had also been to that border, and he talked about the tragedy that's unfolding there. On that border, I saw the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies significantly scaling up our support to our member national Red Cross societies who are providing life-saving assistance. This has been possible thanks to the tremendous global solidarity from our partners, governments, private sector, as well as local and international organizations. As Commissioner Lenarchich said earlier, we are living in turbulent times. Multiple global crises are vying for our attention, and limited resources as outrage and political polarization skyrocket. Multiple global crises. It's really a tragic humanitarian situation. The disastrous impacts of climate change, a very unequal response and recovery during this COVID-19 pandemic, and humanitarian and security crisis in Africa, Americas, Asia, Middle East, and now in Europe, have fundamentally changed the humanitarian and development landscape. Today, we are at a critical juncture. Not only must we recover from COVID-19, but we must use the lessons of this pandemic to shape our readiness and resilience to future crises. The IFRC and our network of 192 member National Red Cross societies have been supporting the needs of vulnerable people for over 100 years, in times of peace and in times of crisis. Our history is deeply rooted in empowering local action, in understanding its value and its challenges. Partnerships and global cooperation efforts must be about putting people and their communities at the center with the goal of improving lives of vulnerable people. This must be matched by tangible investments for communities to engage and influence their growth, their development, and their ability to respond to crisis. We hear this often, that developing countries will need more than $2.5 trillion a year to fill the SDG financing gap, while the total overseas development assistance doesn't exceed $150 billion. But think about this. Private capital sources alone amount to more than $200 trillion. Need is $2.5 trillion. The private capital resources is $200 trillion. To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, an increasing contribution of funds must come from non-governmental sources, particularly the private sector. As we are in the Middle East, I also want to talk about the volume of Islamic finance's projected growth is $5 trillion by 2023. And research shows that just mandatory arms in the form of zakat is anywhere from $200 billion to $1 trillion annually. There is a real opportunity to rewrite the narrative and demonstrate the value added of Islamic finance in the global humanitarian and development landscape. In this context, please allow me to share 3 lessons learned from the IFRC's own experience. Lesson 1, funding must be smart and innovative, and it must drive greater accountability. We are facing a growing humanitarian funding gap that has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The number of people requiring humanitarian assistance is increasing at an alarming rate. We cannot keep pace with rising needs. How do we step up to meet these needs and change how we fund and respond to this crisis? We need to consider smart financing that leverages the funds spent further by creating multiplier opportunities. We need to identify and harness new funding sources, including engaging the private sector. Financing models need to consider the value and approach for each partner. How can private sector engage in ways in ways that drive social impact? How can governments lead change with enabling frameworks? How do humanitarian agencies embrace agility in their business models? These are questions worth thinking about. Lesson 2. New partnership in support of humanitarian and development action must strengthen localization. They must build local capacity. As the IFRC network, we are actively exploring new partnerships and new models of engagement, including innovative financing in support of humanitarian action that strengthens community resilience and localization. These include cat bonds, blended financing models, outcome funds, impact bonds, and debt swaps. We have also identified opportunities that unlock how Islamic finance can be applied to not only support affected communities, but create long-term sustained impact. We recognize that the principles of Islamic social finance provide a shared foundation of social and economic justice and can contribute to shared prosperity through inclusive participation and risk sharing. Lesson 3, scaling up humanitarian and development action must put people at the center. People-centered partnerships towards achieving the SDGs will require new approaches to programming and financing beyond traditional models to enable a sustainable local impact. In 2022 and beyond, we will all be called upon to scale up action on pressing challenges such as climate change, COVID-19, other health crises, disasters, and migration, just to name a few. IFRC's strategic priorities are aligned with and support progress in other global initiatives like the SDGs, the Global Compact for Migration and Refugees, the Sendai Framework, the Grand Bargain, the International Health Regulations, and the Paris Agreement for Climate Change. Contributing to our progress are our 6 flagships focused on strengthening localization, the climate action and humanitarian response, anticipatory action, cash assistance, water sanitation and hygiene or WASH, and global health security. Each global flagship acts as a catalyst for action to meet the world's most pressing challenges. In a post-COVID-19 economy, investing in scaling up WASH and reducing the risk of future pandemics is of paramount importance. IFRC and Islamic Development Bank are exploring innovative financing mechanisms through a multi-partner approach that can scale up WASH and public health infrastructure. Our ambition with every initiative is to continue developing innovative financing models that can leverage donor funding and allow for the private sector to meaningfully engage and demonstrate the value of structures that can be more sustainable, replicable, and scalable to address growing humanitarian and development needs. This is no doubt just the beginning. We welcome your partnerships and collaboration because we have an incredible opportunity in demonstrating how the moral duty in financing from those who can and the dignity that brings in the lives of millions of people around the world can truly be the foundation for building a fairer and more just world that exists in peace and harmony. Colleagues, excellencies, the world's problems exist to be solved by you, by me, by all of us together. But as Einstein once said, we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. I hope the discussions here today helps us to get to a higher level of thinking to solve all problems. I thank you.